Alrighty, hello. Welcome everyone to our Driving Success webinar. So your driver has tested positive on a drug and alcohol test. So now what? So glad you asked, because in episode 3 of our mini series, the 5 pieces of compliance, closing the gap of the big 3, we will be discussing the current gaps in the drug and alcohol system and how the return to duty process is broken. Our integrated and preferred partner, Evolution Consulting, will be providing the data behind the problem and open the discussion on how to fix this issue. Before we jump into the fun stuff, just a few housekeeping matters. We will be doing a Q&A at the end of our session, so please feel free to throw in any questions anytime that we can address, and we can address them at the end. Also, if you see something in our webinar that you feel that you need to write down or take note of, don't worry. You will be receiving a copy of the recording for you to access at any time. So with that being said, let me stop talking and let's go into the good stuff. Sarah and Tony, take it away.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you for that introduction, Emily. Tony and I are happy to be here with you today. We are Evolution Consulting, LLC. We have been in business for 30 years as partners for the Human Resources Department. Our company helps HR hire drivers quickly and also stay compliant with all DOT hiring requirements. Our services include nationwide background checks, drug and alcohol testing, I-9 and E-Verify as required by the federal government, motor vehicle reports, and FMCSA clearinghouse queries. As we all know, the Department of Transportation highly regulates drug and alcohol testing for all safety-sensitive positions. And for the most part, fleets are utilizing a third-party administrator as their vendor who manages and coordinates drug and alcohol testing. The 5 types of testing are randoms, pre-employment, post-accident, follow-up testing, and return to duty. Communication process between the TPA and the employer is great when the test results are negative. But what happens when your driver tests positive? Employers are required to follow regulations in 49 CFR Part 382. The TPA will immediately notify the designated employer representative that the driver is positive for drugs or alcohol. The DER is required to remove the driver from the safety-sensitive position immediately and also help the driver seek the treatment of a substance abuse professional. The SAP will set some follow-up testing to occur over the next 12 months, usually about 6 to 12 tests. And then through the course of treatment, the SAP will determine when the driver can return to the safety-sensitive position. However, most of the time, this process is not being followed. At some point, the driver will communicate with their employer that they have tested positive, or they will not. And the DER may not always pull the driver from their safety-sensitive position. In about 20 days, 163,000 truck drivers who have a prohibited status in the clearinghouse will lose their CDL licenses. And why is this? That's because the drivers had tested positive for drugs or alcohol and did not comply with the treatment program of a substance abuse professional. Now, we spoke to some substance abuse professionals in this industry, and they have all said that employers are not helping the driver complete follow-up testing. They forget about the driver and move on to the next driver that's available to take that fleet or that course for the day. As professionals in this industry, we can do better. The TPA, the SAP, and the employer need to work together to ensure that drivers are returned to their safety-sensitive positions as soon as possible. Drivers need the income to take care of their families, and employers will save thousands of dollars in onboarding costs when drivers are retained. Employers will also remain compliant with ADA laws. And this is probably the first time you've ever heard drug and alcohol testing being mentioned with ADA laws. We want you to stay clear of discrimination. Alcohol abuse is a chronic brain disease, and drug misuse is a disease known as addiction. Both of these require treatment under the ADA laws. We'd like to introduce to you today Evolution Trust Us, a new United States patent pending program that will help strengthen the lines of communication between TPAs, SAPs, and employers. And we want you to all get used to hearing this new term, mental health. You hear it everywhere now. Addiction to substances can be a very private experience for an individual. Most of the time, they are handling it privately until it's until it's known by their employers that they are struggling. And in an industry that's highly regulated, like transportation, it can become an employer's knowledge very quickly that someone is abusing drugs or alcohol. The employee may feel ashamed or embarrassed when they're notified of their positive drug or alcohol test result. So our new program will give employees access to mental health professionals while they're also seeking the assistance of a substance abuse professional. Throughout the course of their treatment, they're able to prove that they are seeing these professionals and possibly get some help from insurance to help cover the costs of their treatment. Our program will also give employers easier access to third-party administrators. Now, as I mentioned before, TPAs can be a strong vendor for an HR department. They will manage the entire drug and alcohol testing process and ensure drivers are completing testing timely. As soon as a driver is not cooperating with the program, they will notify the DER so the DER can pull the driver from the road. Your TPA will also upload all results to the FMCSA and the MIS as required by the law, and they will manage your random programs and post-accident collections. Both types of testing can be very tricky for employers to navigate. Randoms have to be conducted throughout the year, and post-accident collections can happen in the middle of the night. Late into those hours, your TPA is helping you get that post-accident collection to your drivers. A unique feature of Evolution Trust Us that is unheard of in this industry is an encrypted drug and alcohol test report. This means that DER and HR will no longer receive drug test reports that show the abused substances. In the past, we've seen that being led to unintentional discrimination. The only person that should know what the driver tested positive for is the SAP and the FMCSA. The DER will be notified that the driver is positive so they can pull them from the road and then immediately be in contact with a substance abuse professional who is qualified to treat the substance that is being abused and provide follow-up testing for the driver. The TPA will also be notified immediately so they can follow through to ensure the driver completes their follow-up testing timely. All results of follow-up testing is reported back to the SAP and the FMCSA. The great part about this program is that employers, HR managers will know that the driver is complying with the SAP treatment program. This will help HR make informed decisions if they're going to terminate or retain the driver. Their decision is backed by evidence. Tony, you're on mute. Tony, you're on mute.
Is that better?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay. Great job, Sarah. So you're probably all wondering how we got to where we are. In 1972, quite a long time ago, I started my law enforcement career at 18 years old. I went through local PD, state, and then I went to federal. During those years, I became a drug recognition expert. I was one of 24 in the entire country that could tell what drugs a person had in their system and alcohol. One of 24. This was a great asset when I started my business after I retired to do background checks and to do drug testing for pre-employments for the trucking industry. There were no laws when I started doing this. There was nobody saying you had to have a random program. I started a random program with one company. Now we have over 1,000 companies that we do it for. We do tens of thousands of tests per year. We don't only do it for the trucking industry. We do it for electrical unions, plumbers unions, contractors, large vehicle operators, crane operators, air industry, rail, train. So our industry is vast. And what I tell people, like the New York State District Attorney's Office, the Attorney General's Office, who hires us, you're attorneys. You don't do what we do. You make sure that our laws are followed. I'll make sure that your drug testing is complete. I'll make sure your background checks are done right. Same thing with hospitals. I wouldn't ask a carpenter to put stitches in. So why would you ask somebody else to that didn't know how to handle the drug and alcohol testing program to do what we do? Our patent is amazing. We have a patent that goes on every single driver's cell phone. We have the longitude and latitude of every substance abuse professional and every mental health professional and every collection site in the United States that is assigned to every road, any part of transportation. So if your driver is going down the road and a notice comes across his phone and said, Bill, at exit 10 in front of you, 7 miles, is a collection site at Love's Transportation. You're required to have your random test today. Bill can pull off, get his fuel, get his random drug test, buy a slice of pizza, and be back on the road within 15 minutes. His load is not going to be compromised because he's going to be in an area where there's cameras. He's going to be in all sight of his vehicle for the most part. He is not going to wait 3 hours sitting in some clinic waiting to have a drug test done. He's not going to be on overtime, and his load is going to be continuing to go down the road. In the event that Bill comes back positive for, let's just say, cocaine, we have, with the touch of a key, we can find a substance abuse professional that specifies in cocaine. Not all SAPs are available for every single driver who comes back positive. They have to have a specialty. We also have a mental health professional that is also attached to our app that will work together with an SAP to get a driver back on the road. Because the law says they have to have drug tests with the 6 drug tests to 12 drug tests within a year, doesn't mean the driver can't come back to work after a month. A substance abuse professional and a mental health professional can give a diagnosis to say that the driver slipped, he had a joint at a party, he had something that was laced, he didn't know about it, and his last 3 tests are perfect. They've given him enough evaluations to say he can come back to work, but he still must have those tests done within the next year, along with his random test if he's put in a random pool and has another random pull. So having a mental health professional attached to an SAP will give the driver insurance so that his tests and his evaluations are paid for, not by your company, but by insurance. The government says that the ADA must provide insurance to have anybody who has a problem with mental health or substance abuse that they're taken care of in our country. We just put everything together with our app, and it works extremely well. So we have databases that are for healthcare. We have databases that are for rail, for the airline industry, for every single industry. We have different databases that we hold for testing and for random selection. So do you have any questions?
Great. Thank you guys so much. Let's go ahead and we can open up the floor to any questions. I do just want to add in there that, we just attended a conference in North Carolina, the NCTA, and this exact topic got brought up about there's a huge gap when a driver tests positive and people kind of just go, well, we don't really know what to do now. There's really no, like, yes, you can do the return to duty, but there's not a clear process to help that driver really not be stuck, without a company sponsor or without a sponsor to help get them back on that road. So, this program that you guys have put out is going to be really, really game changing to the industry, not just for companies, but for the drivers themselves too. So really great. Let me see. I think we have a question that came in. So how can a fleet company better integrate with their TPAs? I think, from our side, you guys are an integrated partner with us with DQM Connect, and that's one way that you can better integrate with your TPA. We allow our customers to order, review, and store their documents right in DQM for their driver file. So having that connection with you guys has been a really, really time, has helped with time constraints in this industry that everyone has, to not have to manage two different systems, and having that connection with the quick turnaround time you guys give us for our customers is really crucial for this industry. Anything else to add to that?
So I do agree that using a system where you can be notified of the test results is the best way to integrate, right? Whether it's through your HRIS system or you have a partner where your software is being managed by driver files. So we do agree with that statement, definitely, Emily. Tony, I know you wanted to add to that.
Well, as Emily said about the files, we manage and hold tens of millions of records. And when the DOT calls us and asks us questions about a certain company, we can bring up the files, we can bring up the RIN list, we can bring up all of the test results right to the fingertips of anybody who's having an audit when an auditor comes to one of their offices. I do have to say that we are called by the DOT and they will ask us if we do drug testing or handle the management program for a certain company. If we don't, I know that they get audited. And I know if they do, if we do handle it, then they don't have any problems. We work hand in hand with federal DOT. We are called many times to ask about certain questions and asked about companies if they're being managed by us or if they're not. Having law enforcement experience, I think, is crucial to any company to have somebody in their corner that knows the laws like we do. Our job is to keep them safe. And I know that we keep ahead of any changes. As Sarah just said, those drivers that are going to be out of service in 18 or 20 days, in 20 more days, there's going to be 20,000 more drivers. In 20 more days, there's going to be 20 more thousand drivers that are going to be out of service and their companies won't know it. So the communication is essential.
Yeah. Having that, first line of experience is, there's nothing better to help, you know exactly what's going on, and other people can speculate what's going on in the industry, but having that firsthand experience, I mean, straight from the source is the best way to get your information. So thanks for sharing. We do have another question. It says, what is one piece of advice you would give to the transportation industry when handling drug and alcohol testing? I know you gave a lot of advice through this whole webinar, but anything else you'd like to add or kind of just touch back on?
I think changes are happening all the time. Oral testing is going to be coming out. We know when it's coming out. We're involved with the two largest labs in the nation and one in Canada that are able to do oral testing. So we have integrated our software with them. We have APIs with them, and we even have an electronic chain of custody, which is going to change the industry. I can tell you one thing that our patent attorney said, that when we got our patent, they told us this was going to change the transportation industry. So all I know is what they have told us and how successful we've been so far with this.
Awesome. That's great feedback. Sarah, anything to add?
No, Tony summed it up great. Our main goal here is always to provide you with the best practices in safety and compliance, right? The overall point here is you've got to keep your fleets moving. You have to keep industry going forward. And it's what keeps America going, right? And a strong TPA will ensure that you're following the law and that you're completing drug and alcohol testing when you're supposed to. And then the whole point of this, right? What happens when someone's positive? There's a cadence you have to follow to be compliant with law, but also the human element of taking care of that driver. You hired them for a reason. You want them as part of your team. They slipped, that maybe they went to a party, had too many drinks the night before. Does that mean that they should be banned from the transportation industry? No, not at all. We want to give you the tools to get them back to work so you can continue moving your product forward.
This is really personal for me also, not just because what I did in my life. I did drugs and guns and human trafficking. That's what I did. And after retirement, I saw where drivers were injured mentally when people found out that they came back positive for a certain drug. The HR person would tell somebody in the coffee room would tell somebody else. Before you know it, their son was playing Little League and everybody in the stands knew the father was positive for drugs. And it just went on, and I've seen a couple of drivers take their lives. So 3 years ago, I started with Sarah to build this app to make sure that we introduce to our clients that the drivers are more than just drivers. They're people. They need help just like anybody else needs help. Their job is stressful, and they're being tested all the time, and those test results are private. They're personal. And if they have a disease, let's help them. Let's take care of this. And so this is how this app all started. It was based around trying to save these drivers. This is what we've done. We get a lot of positives. We try to help make sure that they get their testing done properly. They get the proper substance abuse professional. This app makes sure they get the right one, not somebody who just puts a shingle out and says, "Yeah, I can do it." No, we need people helped, and so that's the personal side of it for me.
That's really awesome. I always say that drivers are a company's biggest asset. So, you got to make sure that you're keeping those assets happy, healthy, and, ready to go to work. So that's really awesome. Thank you for sharing, that personal side of this. I think it really shows how much you guys care and how much you want this. It's not just a product to push out to the industry. There really is a bigger picture out there. So thanks so much for sharing. Well, it looks like we've answered all of the questions that have come in. So that wraps up episode 3 of our mini series, The 5 Pieces of Compliance. A special thank you to the Evolution team. We would love to connect individually about your company's operations and compliance needs. Like I said before, the recording will be made available to you to watch again or share with your friends, family, colleagues. Be on the lookout for next month's webinar info, as we'll be on episode 4 of our mini series, and we'll be covering fleet credentials with our compliance experts from Vehicle Licensing Consultants. Thank you guys for spending your Tuesday with us. Please stay safe, stay compliant, and keep driving success. Thanks, guys.